to let go. But the bird already hit window. Radio aches with that song we used to sing. Love me, little melody. If there was still a possibility, there'd be no tunes and no me. But I would have given it all up for your love, your jealousy. And do-do-do-do-do-do. I worry about it. Do-do-do-do-do-do. I worry about it. Do-do-do-do-do-do. And I try to forget. Reach for the bright blue, there's glass you break through to let go. But the bird already hit window.
Olympia, welcome to the Right Note Studios.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to finally get you here. I've been working on this for a while. You're a very busy lady, you know.
I've actually been outside waiting to come in for several months.
Oh, you joined that queue of all the musicians who are trying to get in here. We're really selective, though, about who we let in.
Fair enough.
But seriously, I'm so happy to have you here, and even more excited about the fact that you're here with new music. How exciting. How do you feel about it?
I'm so happy to be talking about it and to be out of the studio and out of the writing environment. And I'm so happy to be a punter again, to be going to gigs and reading books and watching films as well.
Well, what happens when you're making music? Do you just go into shutdown mode?
I shut down.
Right.
Cut it off. Clean eating, you know. And then if I'm unhappy with myself, just take more things out. No alcohol, no meat, you know, no daylight, no sleep, until it's done.
Sounds like proper art to me.
Yes.
Yeah. But so how long does it actually take you to sort of formulate, you know, from the beginning to the finished product, the album?
For this one, I spent a solid 12 months away, you know, unplugged. I started by going to Taiwan for a...
Oh, wow.
Someone said, it doesn't take much. It was actually Alex Smith, who I make films with, make the clips with, and he said, I've heard the food's great in Taiwan. Right, straight away, bought a flight.
Right.
And I stayed in this concrete bunker. I think I actually went to the USSR. And that's
Where
when
did you find this, on Airbnb or something?
I don't know, the internet. Like, the pictures were coloured on the internet. But that's when I brought out the diaries and I started the writing process. But it took me a few months to figure out, I knew I wanted to do something different to self-talk, but what it was going to be, and to sort of build this framework. And I spent about 12 months building a world. And I just carried it around in my head to various degrees of madness. And yeah, it was sort of about building the tools. I've said it's like, I imagine Thomas the Tank Engine. That's what's happening in my head now between the words. But it was
with
like...
Ringo also narrating?
Yeah, just
Lovely.
like stop and go signs and
Beautiful.
train tracks. But it was, you know, like thinking what tools I would use in the album, like how I would sing and what instrumentation and the choice of language and imagery.
And so that all sounds quite sort of artistic, but I'm wondering, what about the sort of the subject matter? Because it's quite personal, this record, I think. I mean, was that something you knew from the beginning you were going to be writing about?
It did come about. It was a choice when at the beginning of that 12 months. And I think self-talk is quite conceptual and cerebral, and there's a lot of observation. I'm talking about art, and musically it's so hard to play. It's all, I mean, I was listening to Cypress Hill, so it's all these hip-hop beats and nuance and synthesizers. So this, I did want to make a personal record. I was thinking of the audience a lot more, and I felt I wanted to do it for them.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think about when you think of the audience? I mean, what kind of music do you feel is for them?
I just wanted to make it easier to connect,
Right.
I think. And that, I mean, that was part of the decision making. I don't make all the decisions for them. They get some of it. I was considering them, but I mostly wanted it to, I just thought, what will have broad reach? And it is a personal album, but I'm hoping that it will resonate with people in what they're going through in their life. But I wanted it to be visceral, as if you were just running or you were driving down the Hawkesbury, over the Mooney Bridge, Sydney.
You're in Sydney. You're driving in Sydney.
Yeah, and the windows are down. And for me, so a lot of the lyrics are conversational. I tried to watch the metaphors and the lyrical imagery and make it more like an argument or something immediate and charged.
And it sounds sort of like, if you listen to it from beginning to end, it's almost like going through a sort of a relationship coming to its end, and then you sort of finding a sort of catharsis maybe through that. That's what I got. It's almost like an album following the ending or the saying goodbye to somebody. I don't know, is that what it's about? Or am I way off?
No, you are great. Always. Whatever you said would be great. But you're absolutely right. But it's more that it's an album about grief.
Okay.
And this idea that, I don't know, I was kind of thinking that grief and desire sit together. And with grief, I imagine a pinball machine. And you're trapped behind glass, and these futile movements to try and get from this point to that point. And then, a punter's going to come along with $2 and expect you to dance.
Wow.
And that's how I feel on the album. There's this futileness and these moments of anger and frustration and despair. But then there's this flip side where there's songs like Shoot to Forget and Star City, which are bright and hubris. And I do feel with grief, you are thrown. You are thrown in all these emotions.
Why did you decide to write an album around grief? That's a really interesting topic.
I think that's just how I feel and what I was going through. And I thought, this is a really sexy concept for an album.
Yeah,
People,
it is.
Kids are going to love this.
But we are a world that's frequently in grief. There's so much going on.
Absolutely.
It's something we can all really connect to,
Well,
I think.
the first concept, I was going to go conceptual, and as we all were, I was obsessed by Trump when I started to write the album, and I had started to research all the women in his life, and I was going to name every song about
each of the women.
Because it's goldmine. There's Miss Hawaiian Tropic. Because I felt so frustrated about this polarity of views, yes or no, right or wrong, red, blue, where for me, it's like that documentary, 50 Shades of Grey.
The documentary, yes.
For me, there's so much nuance, and it's case by case, and I think we do a great disservice by just being angry and saying this. Everyone's got an opinion. I just saw a great clip of the Get Crackin' and where they talk about that. I've got an opinion, and that's all that matters. So that's where I started, and I did a lot of research. But it was kind of killing me as well, because it felt cold. And I know I've definitely reached saturation point with that. I don't think that is a way to influence anybody. It would, I think that's quite inflammatory. And it was disheartening. It wasn't bringing me any joy to do that. But I was binging Adam Curtis documentaries. I love him. Yeah,
You've got so many interesting inspirations. You just draw from all these different things. It's great.
I do.
It's really cool.
And he makes 3-hour-long documentaries. He just uploads them to YouTube or something, and he'll talk about the history of Afghanistan. He's got this incredible documentary called It Felt Like a Kiss, and it's talking about the rise of American power in the 60s, and he marries it with wall of sound artists. So Ronettes, the Crystals, and this marrying of pop culture, music and social events.
Yeah.
And I love that he created this platform to talk about music at that level. And he's talking about, and I know I'm going on tangents, so stay with me.
It's all good. Keep going.
River Deep Mountain High. Now, I've heard that song so much, and I've never loved it. It's such a force that I've just let it wash over me in the lift or at DJs when I'm shopping. And Adam Curtis explained that, Tina sang on River Deep Mountain High, and she was hoping that this would help her get autonomy from her husband, and she could move away. Phil Spector hated pop music, and he thought, I'm going to write a #1 hit. he didn't write it. There was a group of songwriters that wrote it. In the studio, because everyone records around one microphone essentially, and the songwriters came to the session and were aghast. Tina Turner was in her underwear because he just made her keep singing it. No, it's not good. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. And then the song came out, and I think it charted at 46. Phil Spector locked his wife in the cupboard and watched Citizen Kane for 4 days straight, and Tina Turner tried to kill herself. And that's a pop song.
Yeah, that's huge.
And
Wow.
people sometimes throw pop around like this derogatory term. Those people were fighting for their lives. They're singing for their lives. And I'm not saying I love that. That sounds macabre. But I love that somebody, and that was Adam Curtis in this instance, helped me see this in a new way. And I do take that all very seriously. But the key thing is, he says, you can't just present reality. If you want to try and maybe influence someone or spark curiosity, you need to present it in a new way. And that's what I've tried to do with the album.
So it's not as literal maybe as people might think when they listen to it. You're not trying to explain this is exactly what's going on in my life. I'm trying to make a bigger point here maybe. Yeah, that's great. I think maybe that's what great art is supposed to do.
Tick.
Isn't it? So look, I love that you sort of formulated ideas and themes, but it also, I know that you are the kind of artist that is already thinking sound, is already thinking visuals, because you're across all of it, aren't you? That's a big thing for you. So were you very involved in the actual production of this record as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Burke Reed, who produced this album, we worked on Self-Talk together. So we know each other quite well, and so he was a little bit tougher on me this time.
Okay. In what sense?
Oh, we just, I think, for me, it never ends. I actually say that in a song. The creative process never ends. And if it was up to me, I would still be making the record and tweaking and revising. And I'm always like, oh, actually, let's start this new thing. Where he'll be like, no, we're going to finish this. And we made a decision to sing very hard on the mic. And it's more like Annie Lennox. And when you hear Sweet Dreams, now there's another great story that they toured Australia, Eurythmics. Do you know this story?
No, tell me.
And they went broke. And imagine, they weren't the Eurythmics
in the middle
then.
of their tour, or?
Yeah, well, it was just going terribly, and
This is like a music history lesson. I'm really enjoying this.
We do need a banner of fact checking.
Yes, let's do it.
Because I'm more of a shapes and feelings, but there is information there. Just click on this link. So they toured Australia, and I'm imagining RSL clubs terribly. They were a couple, and they broke up, maybe on the plane, and they went back to England so dejected, and they wrote Sweet Dreams. And it's the most incredible song.
It's
and
amazing.
It launched them to be giants. But when you hear her vocal, she's singing it so hard, and you think, oh, Sweet Dreams are made of these. But it's an incredible vocal take, and it sends shivers down my spine.
It's amazing. So she inspired you to sort of push your voice a little bit more in this album?
Yeah, that was like no takebacks. And it's when you make an album, Burke has taught me you have to back it. You can't, when people say to me, oh, this album's different, I can't go, oh, I'm so sorry. No, absolutely not. Thank you, you're right.
Yeah, that's what your intention was, to make something different. It's quite visceral, it's your voice is strong, your guitar playing is front and center.
I'd cut out pictures of Annie Lennox and David Bowie and would just sit them on the mixing desk, like, don't forget. Yeah.
They had a lot of fun when they made music. So that's good to remember.
Yeah, I didn't have as much fun as I've heard they had.
I love that you mentioned two songs there, Sweet Dreams and River Deep Mountain High. What's your Sweet Dreams or River Deep Mountain High? Because they sound like there was a lot of pain went into those songs to create them. Do you have a song like that?
I mean, there's some I find difficult. Some songs I find difficult to listen back on the record. Flamingo is one. For me, that has... That is like an organ. If I cut that song anywhere, it would bleed. And
when I listened to it, I thought maybe Flamingo was a person on that song.
Yes,
the person you've named Flamingo.
I was thinking, and a lot of the song titles had this playful, is it distracting element? But it was very much looking at the Francis Bacon element, which started the writing process. And how can you invent, and how can you? He says, bring it back, like open the valves of feeling and bringing it violently back to the nervous system in the audience.
Right.
You think, how does he do that with paint?
But he does.
He does.
Yeah.
And I read a lot of the interviews with him, and so Flamingo is kind of, there's a lot of pain in the record and in that song, but it's trying to open it up into a different way of people thinking about it. But you know, Australia did have flamingos. We had them at Adelaide Zoo, and they were right at the front of the zoo in this very sad fountain zone. And then 10 years ago, a group of 16-year-olds came in, and there was only 2 flamingos left, and they were about 70 years old at this stage, and they beat the shit out of these flamingos.
Oh, no.
And one of them ended up in hospital, and it survived its injuries, but it did later die, and there was only one left. And by this stage, animal husbandry rules changed. You can't just go to the shop and buy a flamingo. You have to buy 100 now, because they've just realised, I think thanks to David Attenborough, that they belong in flocks of millions.
Sure.
And so here's this 75-year-old, and he's so wrinkly, this flamingo, and 4-year-olds would come and cry and write letters saying, I'm so sorry, you're so lonely. And they couldn't just buy 100 flamingos because they would have come in at 18 and stressed it out. So they had to wait for their mistake to die out.
I will never listen to that song again the same way. Wow, that's such an emotional story.
Yeah.
So you felt inspired by it, obviously, to write something.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. we need some tissues in here.
I'm great.
That's great.
You can hire me out for parties if you'd like
fantastic.
some motivational, you know, happy Friday night stories.
What's your hope for this record?
I'd love to present it. I'd love to do this big show that's in my mind, you know, with Bangara Dance Company. No.
Hey, pitch it to them. I'm sure they'd love it.
For me, you know, people say, oh, do you want to be famous, or what's success look like? And for me personally, I think I've achieved what I set out to do. We created something different. It's an atmosphere for me that you step into from start to finish, and I don't know how I did that, because I did feel like I didn't go a little insane. And I'm so proud of Self-Talk, and this stands on its own as well. And I'm so grateful I get to work with people like Burke Reed, Alex Smith, musicians like Peter Luscombe, who just expand my knowledge based on their expertise. So for me, I'd love to start writing again. However, the team that do so much work on the record, I'm sure they have their own measures of success, and I hope they get them.
Well, Olympia, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
See you again soon.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Every sugar rush, ran away, but at what cost? When every taste was a pale you, I hope you're being met. We look up and throw names at stars. These kids, they keep tagging my car. Time will erase, but my memory won't fight you. And out there in the spinning dark, there's a soft little radio ache. It's enough that it once passed.